Welcome back to Access Houston on 97.9 The Box.
Good Sunday morning. You're listening to Access Houston. I'm your host, KG Smooth. We are back with the Access Houston Political Roundtable. House full of names that I don't want to butcher. So what we're going to do is have everyone go around and introduce yourself, starting with Sam Blair.
Sam Blair on the air. It's roundtable time.
Good morning, Houston. It's Antonio Arellano.
Hi, this is Candace Weber.
It's Darrell K. Douglas.
Nika Chapu. Charnel Thompson.
Sam Smith.
All right, and don't be afraid that you'll have to pull that mic up, okay?
Right,
so
gotcha.
everybody can hear you good. All right, so Sam, what you want to touch on?
Let there be tea, y'all. That is
Yes.
what we're calling today. We're going to
Listen.
be talking about CD7.
Oh,
District 29. CD7 is going to be a real good one. School closures.
okay.
Spicy.
A lot of school
Spicy.
closures
Girl, I know
going
you got
on.
something else you
Listen,
want to
I
talk
do.
about over there.
There's plenty I want to talk about, but keep going through your list. I want to see what
No,
else.
it's all right. It's
Okay.
all right. I'm going to let you go. We're going to be talking about some of these issues we've had as well with some racial discrimination. We're going to talk about our dreamers. We're going to
Yes.
talk about how we just had another shutdown, y'all. Another one. But we're back up. You know?
I say shut
Another
it down.
one.
Shut it down.
So let's get into CD7.
CD7, y'all.
But the listening audience may not be familiar with CD7, so please explain.
CD7 is Congressional District 7. It's up for a vote in the primaries right now. There are quite a few candidates who are up for the vote. I guess the two prolific that we're thinking about, most prolific, I guess, would be Joshua Butler, Ivan Sanchez, and I think you have a few other names over there.
Yeah, there are some other people, but if we're talking about listeners to
competition.
979 or people that probably around this table that are really excited about, it'll probably be those two. Culberson's race is going to be one that's going to be competitive. Congressman Culberson, who represents the 7th Congressional District, his numbers have been sliding closer and closer to there being a flippable seat. And so everybody and their mama lined up to run this time around.
And also, let's keep in mind that District 7 is one of the wealthiest districts in our area. And to talk about percentages, we need to discuss that it's 67% white, but it's also 31% Hispanic and 12% black.
And what neighborhoods are those that are
You're talking about
represented?
River Oaks. You're talking about the Energy Corridor. It's perhaps one of the most one of the wealthiest parts of town, and there's a lot of communities that are not being served properly.
Like that district actually spans out clear out to Jersey Village. You know, thanks to gerrymandering, it really is spread out all over the place. But one of the reasons that makes this such a hot
Pull it up.
district is because where the money goes, where the focus goes, where the white gaze goes, and less representation for Black and brown people. And that's what's really concerning to me about this district. Is it's a whole lot of money and a whole lot of influence and power there, and not enough representation for Black and brown people.
Right.
Yeah,
So far, what is it looking like? How do you think it will turn out?
I think it's going to be a spread. I think anytime that you have sort of an open primary on either side of the aisle, either the Republicans or the Democrats, and you have so many candidates, nobody's going to get, above 20%. I think you're going to have two of them that end up going into a runoff, and those two are going to duke it out. But at this point, it's so spread, it's really hard to tell.
Wow.
As a Latino, I don't think that there's anybody on the ticket that is actually representing or addressing my issues. Representative Culberson is against the DACA and the Dreamer protection. He has stood against that and very sternly. We haven't had a Democrat in office in that area since 1967, and the people that are currently running are missing the mark because they're not addressing a lot of the issues.
And just to get into the primary candidates, we have a ton of people running for this. It's,
Right.
it's one of the most amazing races we'll ever see. There's going to be Joshua Butler, James Cargis, Lizzie Pano Fletcher, Laura Moser, Ivan Sanchez, Alex, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Jason Weston. You've got two Republicans, John Culberson, who we talked about as the incumbent, Edward Ziegler, and a third party, Ronald Kimmons, the Reform Party, apparently.
So that's about 10, 11 candidates.
Right. Where the money goes, but let's just be clear. We got on the Republican side, we got John Culberson 1, John Culberson 2, John Culberson 3. They are all the same. They're just packaged in a different way. They don't care about us or our interests. So let's just make it real clear. Say, folks that's listening, don't vote for them. They ain't working for you.
I was gonna ask. I mean, if I can, since this is Let There Be Tea, Ivan Sanchez. You don't think he's touching any of your issues?
Heck no. Like, what has he ever touched?
Hey, I'm not responding to him. I'm just asking.
No. Okay, all right, sorry. I was about to
Okay, because we'll all jump on that one. Trust black women.
We're gonna make this
Look,
fair. Let's just.
my perspective is simple, and I think that I think that he's trying to address the issues. I think that he's uneducated in regards to a lot of the topics. I think that he doesn't necessarily understand the real value of what's at stake. And I think that we need somebody more bold, more willing to actually make a difference, and then necessarily just give sound bites. Right? Sound bites are great, but at the end of the day, we need people that are going to be actually living it and changing and transforming the path to citizenship for a dreamer.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize he was trying. Don't get me wrong. I've kind of looked at some of the campaign things that he's put out, and all I've seen right now is him being transposed to a border wall, which I don't even know what that's supposed to be. Outside of that, I've got numerous emails that essentially say, give me money. But other than that, I'm sorry, I don't really know what he's doing. But perhaps he will work for the 67% of the white people that live in that district.
I'm sure he will. But here's the thing. While we wrapping all of that together, I feel the exact same way about Joshua Butler. I'm sitting there. I was a moderator in a forum, and this Negro tried to all lives matter me. I'm sitting here looking at you. Yes, I'm sitting here. We gonna spill some tea today, okay? I'm sitting here looking at you in my black pride, hella black, hella proud, Black Lives Matter HOU face, and you really try to all lives matter me. And then he went as far as to say, it's important to have a black representative because white people don't understand the way that we react to things. Well, how is that? How am I supposed to react when my son is laying dead, blood in the streets? What is the right way to act? He couldn't answer that. So Ivan is a no. And so is Joshua Butler, as far as I'm concerned.
Wow.
And I've told him this to his face. So it ain't news.
You also need to make sure and to take into account that neither one of them have really presented actual policy as to how they're going to come about the change that they are spewing. So yes, they say that they align with a progressive agenda. Okay, that's great. Everybody wants to be a progressive candidate now around. It's popular.
So they're following the Trump playbook, basically.
Pretty much.
Wow.
But where's
And
the policy?
I had no idea. When I was looking down a list of people that I possibly wanted to support in that area, I thought to myself, maybe Joshua Butler would be a viable solution, because when you read his resume, it's certainly impressive.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
We can all agree with that.
Absolutely.
But then I think the person comes out in the debate. I'm sorry.
I would disagree, and here's why. And I want people, everybody that's listening, within the sound of my voice, when you see people holding high positions at these organizations, and y'all can't see me use my giraffe ears, but my air quotes, these
The air quotes is strong.
organizations, usually they are token positions. And in my personal opinion, as someone who has worked for different organizations, I can tell you that a lot of time people hold these positions, and that's a strike against them more than it is actually a demonstration of progress. Because a lot of these organizations that wear these big names and get these big grants care more about putting your face on a poster in order to get that next grant than actually addressing your issue. Because if you really think about it, if they address your issue in this poor neighborhood or this black neighborhood or this brown neighborhood, then where's their next check coming from?
Thank you.
I get that. And which
Thank
actually
you.
comes down to when we start talking about Bonton and Dutton. It seems that Dutton sold out our schools for a $5,000
piece legit.
Absolutely.
Wow, you
Yeah,
guys,
let's
we got
talk
all
about
these kids
that.
who may not have a school to go to next semester because
Because of money.
No,
That's
I
confirmed.
dropped the
There are
receipts this
the
morning.
emails, there are receipts.
They're there. So
Yeah, give us the skinny.
long
Hold
story
on, before
short,
you do that, you're listening to Access Houston. This is the Political Roundtable. Got a gang full. Go ahead, Darrell.
absolutely. So State Representative Harold Dutton, who has been in office since 1984, that's 2 years before I was born, in 2015, or actually let's go back to July of 2014, he got a check from an organization called Texans for Education Reform. This was a $5,000 check, maximum contribution. He then became the architect.
$5,000.
$5,000. $5,000. Now that's what he had to report. That's what's reportable. But if I had to guess, I would guess there are a lot more perks that came with it. That following legislative session, so this is July, so January legislative session begins, and he's credited as being the architect of a bill, House Bill 1842. What it basically said is, even though our schools have been under-resourced, especially black and brown schools, even though they've consistently not funded our schools, and even though he's been there for 30 some odd years, let's move the goal. You know, when you play a Monopoly, before y'all start, y'all gotta agree. on the rules, right? Are we putting all the money under free parking? Are we getting double 200 when we land on go? Those are the rules that you set beforehand. Well, what he did in the middle of the game was move the goal and said, hey, if these schools don't meet these testing requirements, then the commissioner shall, not may, but the commissioner shall do one of two things: close that school or take over the district.
Right.
Right. So in effect, what HISD has started doing is sort of, instead of calling it a closure, instead of calling it a charter, they're kind of putting lipstick on a pig and calling it a partnership. But at the end of the day, they're passing over the keys to our historic schools like Worthing, Wheatley, Madison, Kashmir, Madden,
Yes.
over to a third party that we know very little about. In fact, I'm almost finished. At this meeting the other day at Wheatley, we actually asked HISD. They came with this PowerPoint, and we wanted to know, are there case studies with this partner you want to work with? What will the timeline look like? And these are questions that they do not have answers to. And going back to Dutton, for him to be a black man representing the schools, where two of which are within his district, I personally think that it's ironic and absurd.
It is absurd. And let me tell you why. I mean, I feel like, brother, you should have taken your 40 acres and a mule, because at least that's more than $5,000 worth of sellout for your people. You know, I mean, look at it. $5,000. $5,000. I mean, come on. You don't care enough about us. And that's what happens when you've got these people that sit in these seats for longer than Darrell, not me. I mean, black don't crack, but still. For longer than this young man has been alive, they've been sitting in these seats. And while you're sitting in these seats, you placating the white people.
Yes.
It doesn't matter to you, because $5,000, that was a good bid for you, because you made your mark. And you don't care about anybody else coming up. You know, it's like, what happened to that we lift as we climb? Dutton has no idea what that means and what that looks like, because it has been whitewashed right out of him. He is not for our people. And I'm not going to let anybody think that he is, especially Dutton. And on top of that, now you want to buck constituents and you want to be homophobic and carry on like you're not sitting in a seat. You're not even carrying yourself as a gentleman would. So why would I put my trust in you? You are anti-black. If you attack a black person because of their sexuality, you are anti-black. Let that marinate. And that is exactly what I saw with my own eyes that he did.
So
I'm not cool with that.
And just to spill a little more of this tea, this actually happened on my page. So
I heard about some things
Yes,
that went down. It got
absolutely.
very contentious at one of the
Yes.
at one of the meetings here lately.
Yes, absolutely.
Share your story. Darrell.
So there were two different posts, one of which we were going back and forth about this bill, right? About 1842 and about how I disagree with it. And at one point he tells me to go under, what did he say? Go crawl under a rock. To where I said, after you, sir. And then he replied, what did he say? That's the only time that you've ever been in the back, or something like that. Yeah.
Wait,
yes.
what?
Yes. This is on Facebook. This is on Facebook. And then the other comment was, we were going back and forth, and some other people that also disagreed with him. We were like, well, we're gonna do a fundraiser for your opponent, blah blah blah. And he says, well, it shouldn't be hard for you to come out then, right? So listen. I understand that as a black gay man, I got two cards that I can use, and I use them both when necessary. And for him to be homophobic on one hand and to do this publicly, bring it on.
Right, exactly. So you want to fight? Yeah, let's fight. He took the gloves off, know, and that's the thing. And we have to hold our elected officials accountable. When I'm rooting for everybody black, I'm rooting for everybody black. I'm not rooting for Dutton. Dutton is one person. I'm rooting for everybody black. And if one black person think that he can attack an entire genre of black people, give me that card. You Omarosa in my life, okay?
My issue, y'all, what I'm really, really worried about is that our politicians have stopped being public servants and they become celebrities. They become people who are comfortable in their seats.
Right.
And that's a real serious concern of mine.
Absolutely.
Like, when do we get back to the people?
Oh, they're going to get a wake up. I have a feeling that they're going to really get a slap in the face, and, they're going to be out of work.
Yeah, I mean, and it is election season, and everybody seems like they're hard on the campaign.
Pull up the mic.
And what I will say about the bill that we were just speaking about, what it does, he's tried to back himself up with his motivations behind the bill, which is to improve the schools that have been chronically failing in these low-income areas. However, what I'm disappointed with is that if you look back at Brown versus the Board of Education, in those times they were able to prove that in those schools they were failing. They weren't under resourced. They did not have as much program as some of these schools in the higher income areas. With somebody who has been on the education committee as long as he has, I would have liked to have seen a bill that mandates improvement in schools somehow. Maybe in programming, maybe in resources, maybe in allocation, things of that. Right, and I think that exactly.
Yes.
And I think that would have been nice, and I think that should be important that we're pushing that forward. Not just the character or the type of person or the type of tweets or the type of quotes that they put on Facebook, but what's really in this bill. What we really need to be addressing, which is improvement in these schools, better principals, because if we look at Wheatley High School, the principal that they just had over there that was just removed was at Fort Bend ISD, and she was fired. So how did she even get into the school in the first place? So these are some of the things that we need to be looking at when we're talking about school closures and school improvements. I think that's what we should really focus on when we're talking about HISD and just districts as a whole.
And what's really I guess ironic about this whole situation is when you look at schools like Kashmir, if you look at my birth certificate, I was born at the Koch Apartments. Like, that was where we lived in Fifth Ward. I grew up on Zelinsky. I lived on Sandpiper. So I come from neighborhoods very similar to what the neighborhoods these schools grew up in. And when you close the closest school and your mom don't have a car, or if you don't even live with your mom, you live with grandma, and grandma does not have a car, are you going to be more or less likely to go to the school that's even further?
Right.
If they close Cullen and send those kids to the rival school, what's going to happen? If they put Madison, where are you going to send these kids? And then I think also another thing we have to look at with these incumbents is effectiveness. Because my thing is this: if you've been in office for 30 years and we send you back every 2 years and you're losing every time, we've got to realize you're just not good. And you may mean the best, but you're ineffective. And we can't continue to allow one party to blame the other as the reason. Sometimes
Houston has got to flip that switch. Houston has got to realize that it cannot continue to elect the same people and expect different changes. It's just not how it works.
Yeah,
And let's
thank
be
you. Get out
aware
of
of the new people that look a lot like the same people who were there, because we get a lot of those too. We get those people who pass down generations. So they say, okay, you want me out, I'm out, but my son's going to be there.
Bernie.
My friend's going to be there.
Yeah,
my
exactly.
somebody's going to be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's unfortunate, because when you start looking, and let's take a 30-year span, right? You start looking at what has happened to Black people in a 30-year span. There's a reason that I choose you.
Ride.
Exactly. There's a reason why I should choose you as a representative of me. You look like me. That means that you need to be in this neighborhood where we both come from. Seeing and feeling what I'm seeing and I'm feeling. Stay connected to that. And that way you still move in the best interest of the children that you're supposed to serve, of the community that you're supposed to serve. But when you've got things like systemic racism that sets these kids up for failure already, when Republicans look at Black people, they don't see people. They see a continuation of money and power. So I'm going to kick this little Black kid out of school right now. I'm going to call that little Black girl things like angry, aggressive, belligerent, all of those things that they like to label us as. Kick her out of school and then give it 2 years. She's going to be right back in the system, except now she's coming into the county jail. And we can count on that money to keep them rich. Dutton should have seen this.
Rich, because
or their
more than
friends
likely it's probably a private prison.
Exactly. And the thing about it is those people that want to profit off of Black bodies are not Dutton's friends. And because you have used all your political clout and all your power to side with them, you ain't got no friends in the community either. We are for ourselves now.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
You listen to Access Houston, the political roundtable. Let's get into this before we have to wrap this thing on up. DACA, the Dreamers, Trump, with the back and forth threatening another government shutdown, which we thankfully had avoided. Antonio?
It's absolutely ridiculous that we find ourselves in this position. Over 80% of American citizens support a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants that arrived in the country as children. It is absolutely fundamentally important that Washington politicians stop playing politics and actually accomplish what they were set there to do, and it's changed lives. Not only that, but it's a massive economic boost here in Houston and across the country. It's a massive economic boost, and it would be a waste to turn away the most bright and vetted, okay? A lot of people keep talking about MS-13. MS-13 has nothing to do and does not depict what a dreamer is at all. It's not gang related at all. In order for you to qualify for DACA, you have got to go through background checks, biometrics. You are in the system as much as much as you can possibly be, right? There's background checks, there's interviews, there's months of waiting. So for people to label undocumented immigrants that are students that are trying to better themselves as anything less than Americans is unpatriotic.
It is absolutely unpatriotic. And it makes no sense whatsoever. It's like one of those things that it just feeds the white fear. And right now, that white fear is what's leading the narrative. And
the nation.
And the nation, absolutely. And, you know, something that I want Black people to understand is they feel like the DACA issue, DACA beneficiaries, is a Latin issue. First of all, Afro-Latinos exist. So if yes. So that is an issue. But we've got other kids that are here that are from other countries besides Latin countries. Yeah. We have got one of the biggest populations of Nigerian people right here in the city of Houston. And I'm talking about countrywide.
Yep.
So
and Pacific Islanders.
Exactly.
All of that.
You know, so this is not just, we can't look at this and be like, oh, well, you know, I wish y'all well. No, we're not sending brown folks thoughts and prayers. We're fixing to get in this fight with them because this is also our fight. Own it, because this is affecting Black lives.
Right. Indeed. Go ahead.
And at the end of the day, we have to call it for what it really is. It's not when I hear stuff like tough on crime or the need, you know, the use of illegal, you know, like. That is nothing but racism. And sometimes I just want to tap people and say, sound it out. Say it. Say it out loud. Look in the mirror and say, I'm racist. Because at the end of the day, that is what it is. You know, when you look at the need for justice reform or the need for immigration reform, look at how this country was founded. And I'll tell you why this became a really important issue for me. I have several friends who I did not know were undocumented until after all of this.
Oh,
These
wow.
are people who I grew up with.
Yeah.
I remember in Austin, one of my friends, Rudy, we would go out. I mean, when I was in Austin, when I was younger, we went out every weekend. Yeah. And every now and then I would look up and Rudy was not with the rest of the group. He would just like leave. Well, later I would find out that it was because if they were checking IDs, Rudy would turn around and go back home. Yeah. And that's something that he had to hide inside. I wonder, why didn't Rudy drive? Like little stuff like that. And then you understand, when you've been in someone's house and they are mourning the loss of someone that is still alive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But just across the border because they were sent there, that changes the way that you look at things. And there's an all-out assault, you know, from one class and one race of people, right, on others. And I think we have to acknowledge that for what it is. If you're not if you are one of these people who sees what it is, right, and you are white, it is your responsibility. And it's my responsibility as a documented citizen to not be an ally for, but stand with.
Right.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to the civil rights movement and the great leaders of that movement, what's happening to the undocumented community is the civil rights movement of our time. And these people are fighting for their humanity. That is what they're begging to be acknowledged as. You know, that's it. And we have got to align with each other and realize that before it's too late. Because what's happening inside the White House, what's happening as a part of this white supremacy being bolstered by the negative rhetoric around immigration is completely shameful, un-American, and should not continue to flourish in this country.
Indeed. Before we get out of here, there's two things I wanted to touch on real quick. How crazy is it that Trump wants this military parade? Like that. I'm like, when I heard that, I'm like, wait a minute. Puerto Rico doesn't have like right. It still don't have, but he wants to spend millions of dollars on a military march that he saw in France, and he wants the same thing. I'm like, this is something that dictators do in a third world country.
It's not just that, but this is what rich white boys do when they want somebody to throw a big party for them. Okay, daddy's dead, and daddy can't throw him the biggest, best birthday party in the world. So now he has pulled the biggest heist Okay, because he stole this country.
Yeah.
He has pulled the biggest heist in American history, and he wants us all to jump on board and throw him a parade. Nah, baby, I'll throw something at you, but it will not be a party or a parade.
And
Shout
like,
out to old girl Omarosa, y'all. She didn't. I don't know what she's.
It's
supposed
Black
to be
History,
doing.
girl. We're not talking about Omarosa. It's Black History Month. We don't think
but
this.
you know what? I will say, I mean, even though in my head I'm like, girl, bye. But I saw the clip on Celebrity Apprentice where she was crying and talking about how,
First
talking
of
to Ross
all,
like,
I wanna
oh,
be an
it's
actress,
really
too.
bad. Like, it's like.
Oh, you talking about on Big Brother?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
like, cry me a river, build a bridge.
Tell
and get
me
over
why
it.
Big
But-
Brother's gonna have the best interviews than any other professional news outlet.
Right, that's
see why right
crazy.
now.
But the thing that I wanted to highlight and underscore the most, Black Panther drops on Friday.
Yes. Listen, it is going to be Black excellence up
That is-
and down. We have been waiting
Listen,
for
when I
this.
tell you my excitement for this one, because I feel like what it's about to do for Black people, especially these Black kids, like
Yes.
it's really about to change. You know how in
Yes.
every movie there's that climax
Yes.
where things change for the better. I think with throughout the years, the ongoing progression of being unapologetically Black, the rise of Black Lives Matter, the nod that Beyonce gave every other Black person that wasn't woke, like it's okay to love yourself and your features, like
A Wrinkle
up
in
into
Time.
where we're here, A Wrinkle in Time, just all of the Black, and all of the
beautiful.
great things that we are finally seeing on television, writing, just all of that. I feel like Black Panther is. It's
Can I
about
just
to.
say that I have 3 outfit changes ready?
No, wait, pause.
Fashion
It-
Nova Slate 30 for the
Fashion Nova. And can we just talk about the economic impact, because they're gonna
Yes,
feel it, and they need to
are.
understand that this economic impact
Yes.
is coming, Hollywood, from Black and brown communities
come on,
that want
absolutely.
to see that on the big screen. So stop giving me the other.
Yep.
Give me some
Yep.
color
Yep. Some
superheroes.
And that's what I love.
Give me
And
some
that's what
color
the director
superheroes.
said. He grew up. He was born in the '80s. Grew up in the '90s. Didn't have a lot of representation. We were only
Right.
3 things, and so here is a movie where it's all Black. We are powerful. We are what we originally
Right.
were.
And you know what? This is how we
Royalty.
flip the script in a child's
Superheroes.
mind.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
read a book, books that are written by Black authors, a little Black kid sitting there. It doesn't occur to them because of this system, this systemic racism, that the heroine or the hero in that book is actually a Black boy or a Black girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They don't
absolutely.
see that because this country won't allow them to see it. Well, listen.
Listen.
Black Panther said no more. Okay?
I was so pissed
It's
when
time.
Princess and the Frog came out, and I'm like, really,
Okay.
Disney?
Right.
She's got to
Like,
be a
is that what
frog
they-
throughout.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
princess has
that's
to be a
foolish.
frog throughout the whole.
And why her man
entire
got to be
movie?
searching for
Like, come
money
on.
and
Right.
no, come on,
But listen
we're
here, we are out of time.
royalty.
Oh my gosh, this is I know.
Can
Right?
I do one more thing?
What?
For those of y'all that are not following KG Smooth on Instagram, he could have been in Black Panther. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Listen. When you talk about golds, okay? KG Smooth has me on this like man.
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks,
you
guys.
I know.
Yes.
we got things coming. How did this suddenly
Can
turn
I
into-
can I give it
into
just
a-
one second because I do want to plug something that's happening on March 3rd, and it is the March for Black Women here in Houston.
okay.
Yes, it is a big deal. We're going to all be meeting up at Emancipation Park, and we're going to celebrate Black women. We're going to celebrate Black girls, and it is going to be a day for us, and we are unapologetic about it. No, it is not a day for Black men. Y'all
Well,
come
you'll
up
be
and
back.
support.
You'll
Yes.
be back to talk about
Yes,
it.
yes.
We'll talk about
Look
that
out
more.
for it, y'all.
So
Let's see
thank
y'all.
you all. And I'll see you guys next week,
Yes.
hopefully, at least majority of you all. And thank you for listening to Access Houston.